Greetings and welcome to the Pransform podcast. I'm your host, Christopher Anastasio, and this is episode 9 of season 2. For today's episode, we have a very special guest for you guys, Angela Thurman. As the founder and CEO of Thurman Company LLC, Angela provides technical consulting for project management, process improvement, supplier and tool assessment, continuous improvement projects, and contract analysis and management. She has over 25 years of experience in the aerospace, defense, telecom, and power sectors, and a proven track record of delivering complex and high-value programs and contracts for clients such as Collins Aerospace, Boeing, Airbus, and Sprint. Her core competencies include program management, contract management, and compliance. She's a certified project management professional as well as a Mensa Society member. She holds a Master of Science in Telecommunications Management and a Bachelor of Science in Electrical Engineering. Angela, thank you so much for joining us today.
Oh, it's my pleasure. Thank you for having me.
You're welcome. So, Angela, obviously we had a previous conversation before this podcast session, a fascinating one, I might add. And I wanted to kind of land right in the deep end with a concept that you kind of left me with. It's still ringing around in my head since you mentioned it to me. And that's the concept of, and we're sort of starting off with a focus on your project management background, that everyone is a project manager. Can you discuss exactly what you mean by that and sort of the universality of that concept, how everyone can take something away from that?
Okay, yeah, I'd be happy to. So I've been officially a project manager or a program manager since the inception of my career way back in the late 80s. And I am trained as an electrical engineer, but throughout my career, I have found myself assigned to projects where I have been assigned to see the development of a project. And so a project is something that you're going to undertake, and it's temporary. It is temporal. It has a defined start and finish. And you're going to achieve a certain objective or outcome. And it's defined by the scope of whatever that objective is. So you're going to design a new car, or you're going to design a circuit, or you're going to build a bridge, or something like that. And you're allocated a certain budget to do that. So you've got scope, you've got schedule, you've got budget. Those are the three basic tenets of project management. There's a lot more that goes into it, but those are the three basic things. So with that in mind, it's my view that we are all project managers, whether we consider ourselves project managers or not, because throughout our daily lives, we're all undertaking projects. So I always give this example: making dinner is a project you have undertaken. You have to decide, you have to plan what to make for dinner. You've got certain ingredients. They are either already in your refrigerator or your pantry, or you have to go buy them. And you have a certain budget. So is tonight a spaghetti and meatballs budget, or is it a filet mignon budget? And then there is an allotted time. You've got a schedule, because is your household a 6:30 dinner time or an 8 o'clock dinner time? But at some point during the evening, the kids are going to expect to be fed. So you have a scope, you have a budget, and you have a schedule, and that defines a project. So making dinner is a project. Planning a vacation is a project. And I know, Chris, you and I talked about your upcoming birthday trip. So you're planning a very extensive vacation. Planning a birthday party, planning a wedding. I actually used to own a wedding planning business. And so that was a lot of very significant project management. All of
Yeah.
those kinds of things, whether you're doing some household improvements, those are projects that you could undertake. You can view yourself as the project manager of building a deck, painting the living room, whatever those kinds of things are. So that's my view, is that we are all project managers of our lives, and whether
Yeah.
we see ourselves as project managers or not, and we are successful or not.
Yeah.
And so if we don't mind the schedule, if we don't mind the budget, if we don't mind the scope, we could have scope creep in our little projects of our daily lives. There could be consequences, and then we have to learn what a project manager does when there is scope creep, or when the schedule goes off the rails.
You know what I love about your way of looking at this, Angela, is that you take something that, let's say a business owner or one of our audience members, somebody like that, is thinking that project management or the application of project management is something complex for them, is a big, kind of scary thing. But the way you put it, it takes these sort of officious sounding words, scope, schedule, budget, and you start realizing it's like, what am I doing? When am I doing it? And how much is it going to cost? And the fact that people are already doing it, that it's just part of daily life in many instances. I think it's so helpful to sort of simplify and sort of bring the concept back home a little bit for that individual and make them realize, like, okay, this is something that I can successfully do for project X or Y or Z. And so I really love the way that you frame that and sort of bring it back to where people can digest it, so to speak. So,
Well, good. I hope it was helpful to your viewers
absolutely.
as well.
So, like one of the other things we talked about, Angela, was also your background in risk management, some of those principles that you teach and so forth. How can, from the standpoint of what you teach and your expertise, how can that be applied to, let's say, a standard small or medium-sized business? What are they kind of looking out for there? What should they be aware of? What are some big concepts they can kind of take away from you as far as that goes?
So I think that all business owners face risk, and they may not be aware of it. Probably some are more aware than others, but business owners of all different kinds can apply risk management principles into their daily operations. And one of the things that they can do is to embed them into their daily decision making and strategy planning processes. And here's how they could do that in practice. So the first thing is to create a structured risk register for all of the major initiatives that they are planning. So even a small business owner can hold a monthly risk review meeting with their team, and they can list out the potential threats and opportunities that they are identifying before these threats and opportunities become critical issues. And then they can learn to assess and to prioritize those risks. So consider weighting the likelihood versus the impact using a simple 1 to 5 metric to create a threat level. And then to mitigate those that have the highest score, mitigate those first, because if those are the most threatening, you want to address those threat. If it's a lower score, lower risk, lower impact, then you can obviously allow those to percolate a little longer. And then develop your mitigation and contingency plans for those higher threat risks. And you also want to identify methods to capture opportunities, because it's not just risks we're evaluating, but also opportunities. And then the next step is to assign a clear owner for each of these, because someone has to be accountable if this plan is going to succeed. If you
The
just
toughest part of the process, I imagine.
exactly. If you just identify everything and then walk out of the meeting, nothing's going to happen. And then you want to continue to review and revisit your risk register regularly. And usually a monthly cadence will suffice. If some of these threats are more urgent, then you may need to bring that cadence, bring those out as a special project and cadence them more regularly, like maybe a weekly meeting. And then I can't stress this enough, leverage your lessons learned by holding postmortems. You may sometimes hear them called after action reviews, because this is where those become opportunities for continuous improvement.
Actually, a term I was familiar with from the military, after action review, is sometimes uncomfortable.
Yes,
Go
yes.
well, but it's a different story. One thing that, and also kind of calling on my military experience, when you mentioned opportunities and threats, Angela, that was familiar to me from the whole SWOT analysis of strength, weakness, opportunity, threats. When you're talking about opportunities and threats here, is it part of a larger SWOT analysis, or are you sort of like separating these two for the simple purpose of identifying risk, and you're just really like laser focusing on the opportunity and threat portion of that?
It's really more the latter. So, but when you're working in risk management, it shouldn't always be negative. It's not always bad news. You do sometimes want to have a little bit of good news of how can we focus on capturing some positive news, some opportunities. For example, how can we capture the opportunity to bring the schedule in or save some money in our budget, things like that. That can be a positive thing.
Gotcha. So when you mentioned the towards the beginning of your explanation there, when you talked about the structured risk register, can you give a visual of sort of what does that look like? Is that as informal as somebody typing into a Word document or a spreadsheet? Is there something more, I guess, defined about the way that should look and how that should operate within this larger context?
Well, there are many, many templates available for free if you just search for a risk register, but the basic content of a risk register should have an identification of what the risk is. It should be in your risk register. Each risk should be numerically identified. So like risk number 1, risk number 2, identify what the risk is, then give it a score 1 to 5 for its likelihood, give it a score 1 to 5 of its impact, and then if you multiply those two numbers together, you'll get a risk priority number, and that's the combined score that you're going to use to determine which risk to prioritize. So your risk priority number. And then you're going to identify an owner and maybe a notes field to where in each risk review meeting you just capture some notes of what's happening as far as your mitigation plan. And then maybe also another field where you identify what is the plan to either accept this risk, a plan to mitigate it, transfer it, or what your plan is.
Gotcha. So it seems like there's some accepted templates already out there that people can draw from, and then there are these critical elements that need to be part of the risk assessment that really create the output that you need.
And this is easily created in an Excel spreadsheet, Google Sheets, whatever type of spreadsheet that the team wants to use. And really, a spreadsheet is more appropriate than a document, because you are going to carry out a calculation and you're going to be updating it on a regular cadence.
It also seems, Angela, like, when you emphasize towards the end about the lessons learned, This might be the part that people will sometimes skip over in the rush to kind of get on to the next thing. It's as
Oh, yes.
critical as any other part of it from what I'm hearing from you. So I suppose like putting it on the schedule right from the beginning that you're going to do a lessons learned, you're going to do an after action, things like that would be helpful for our audience or for, for business owners to follow. So, if there's tips beyond that, please feel free to share. But it really sounds like at the essence of it, you have to plan to do that right from the start. Otherwise, you're going to kind of maybe blow past it when the time comes.
That's true. And that's unfortunate because in that urgency to get to the next project or the next thing on your list, and when you skip that lessons learned opportunity, you rob the organization of the knowledge this team has gained. And so it's very likely that another team is going to repeat this lesson. And so you don't share this new knowledge with the whole organization, and so that's a real missed opportunity because you just keep going around the mountain one more time, reinventing the wheel one more time, and that's wasteful. I can't think of the number of times I've been in situations where I'm trying to get through a problem and someone says, "Oh, well, that's just like such and such project did 3 years ago." I'm like, well, if someone had only told me, I wouldn't be in this situation.
And I think, Angela, it's interesting too because, some of our audience, I think this will be kind of old news to them just in terms of like how important it is if maybe already doing it and so forth. But I really suspect we have a larger portion that thinks that this is something that can just sort of run through their head mentally, and just sort of like, hey, I've got it, I know what the risks are, whatever. When this process is so important to really like have it play out and follow a structured methodology or approach to it. And so I really, I like the fact that we kind of hammered it home, even though some of these concepts are sort of well accepted, from this standpoint. But I do suspect that there are people sort of skipping this, thinking they've got it under control when they don't really have it under control. So definitely appreciate kind of peeling that back with you. Just taking sort of a step below that, more specifically, are there any hidden risks that you've seen business owners miss, or they just catch them too late and they've gotten out of hand, and you've seen a repetitive pattern to that in your time doing this?
So I would say one of the most important things is the over-reliance on key personnel. So one or two key individuals in the organization holds the tribal knowledge of the whole company, how the company operates, and that then puts the business at risk if those people then suddenly leave the company or they become ill, they take some type of long-term disability. I can put this into strikingly, obvious description here. I used to live in Cedar Rapids, Iowa, and the Quaker Oat plant is in Cedar Rapids, and so so one of the rules for playing the lottery is that a maximum of 20 people can pool together their resources to play the lottery. And so at the Quaker Oat plant, the shipping department, made up of 20 individuals, had a long-running pool for playing the Powerball. And at one point, they won $13 million. And so on a given day, the entire shipping department left the company.
I had a feeling this was going somewhere bad.
Yes.
And it
So
did.
if you could imagine what it would be like to come to work one day and there was no more shipping department. what would you do? That was a
That is
real
a
world
great story.
situation when I lived in Iowa.
I mean, I'm happy for them, but
Yes, we're
bad
all
outcome
very
for the
happy
Quaker.
for them. But 20 people in one department left the company on the same day.
Yeah. An extreme but very relevant example of tribal knowledge going out the door on a
Out the
shot.
door. Yes. So,
Yeah.
so you want to have a business continuity plan, a contingency plan, and you would not want all of that knowledge to be left with absolutely not with just one or two key personnel, but definitely you want to have cross training. You want to have the knowledge distributed. You certainly want to have standard operating procedures so that people can come in and be trained on those roles. So I would say that that is one of the hidden risks, because you never know when, a flu epidemic is going to come through the department, or, something like that. Even having a department out for training for a week can hinder the operation of the business. So another thing is overdependence on key suppliers or vendors. So if you're relying on a single source supplier for critical materials, that can lead to delivery delays, quality issues, and even halt production. So while I understand the financial benefits of having a single source supplier, you've consolidated all your purchasing power with this one vendor, so you've probably got the best pricing you can possibly get. The flip side of that is you're dependent, you're reliant on this one single supplier. And so if that supplier has any kind of interruption in their production, let's say a tsunami, an earthquake, a fire, any type of act of God, government havoc, a power outage, any of those types of things, bankruptcy. I've seen that one too. Anything that might disrupt that supplier's production is going to disrupt your production. So you have to be a little bit discriminate about where you spend with your supply base and balance that. And then another thing is cybersecurity and data protection plans. Because most small to medium-sized companies often assume that they're so small that they're not likely to be targeted for attacks. Well, maybe that's true, but if they have unpatched software, if they have weak password regulations in the company, or outdated systems, any of these can create easy access for attacks. And we just never know where those attacks can come from. It's not just the big companies that are being targeted today.
It's such an interesting point you raised there, Angela, because it feels like the kind of thing that businesses are like, we'll get to that later, or when we have enough revenue coming in, we'll take care of that, and it inevitably comes back to bite them, or something along those lines. So, so that's what I started thinking of as you mentioned the large to small differentiation. On the one hand, they think it won't happen to them. On the other hand, they're delaying it, or they can't afford it, or something, and then they happen to get targeted, and it's just a disaster.
They can take it in phases. The first thing is to make sure that all of their software has run all the patches. And, this is just a simple IT update. And then they have to be rigorous about enforcing password security. So those two things can be fairly simple updates. And then they can begin to consider whether their systems are outdated or updated, and then move to even more secure cybersecurity and data protection plans. And then for any of the the viewers that are in industries or businesses that are looking to be ISO certified. The ISO 2015 update does require, it specifically requires cybersecurity protection. So we want to just be mindful of that.
I think, adding a point to what you mentioned about the tribal knowledge, it feels like everybody's got some degree of experience with this one way or another. There's somebody in the company who's like the best at this thing or that thing, and they know it better than anybody else. Then they get sick or they go on vacation, and it's like, we're grinding to a halt because we got to wait for that person to come back or something. So on a micro scale, you kind of feel it that way, and then to the macro, the example you gave of the entire department, even, you have those examples as well. But that tribal knowledge, it really resonates with me because we can just all picture some moment in time where we're running into that brick wall because that person, for some reason or another, is not available, or those people are not available when we need them. So thank you so much for that, Angela. I wanted to, as we talk about these big concepts of project management, risk management, process improvement, and we focus there for a moment. What do you see business owners missing or doing? Let's say they're not missing it, but they're doing it incorrectly or sort of harmfully, if you will, when it comes to process improvement. Like, how can they maybe get better at that if they're not quite there yet?
Yeah. So many business owners treat process improvement as a one and done. It's a one-time project, when actually it's a culture change. So continuous improvement needs to be embedded into the everyday operations of the business. It needs to be a thought change across the operations of the business. So I think that currently I see businesses where the teams begin to focus on solving the symptoms that they see, or the direct causes of a particular problem, rather than getting to the true root causes of that problem. So I call that, it's just the direct cause. They're only solving the surface symptoms. And then they jump right into providing solutions for that surface symptom without understanding what the underlying why behind the true root problem is that they have. And so they just keep solving these symptoms and never really get to the true root problem. And so another thing is that they skip standardization when they make these improvements. So too often the businesses find a solution to a quick solution to their problem, but then they fail to make that improvement a standard across the business, or they fail to document their new process. And without that, these old habits begin to creep back in, and then pretty soon any gains that they had made with that improvement are lost. So one thing that I would suggest is that the team that's leading whatever process improvement is being studied, number one, yes, you want to identify the direct cause, but you want to get down to the true root cause. And then when you have a solution for the root cause, create a standard operating procedure, make that make that solution standard across the entire business, and make sure that it is adopted so those old habits don't return.
Gotcha. So it feels like, correct me if I'm wrong, Angela, like some of the most overlooked aspects of this are root cause. I mean, definitely emphasize that. And then also the standardization part. If you were trying to package up just a couple of tips for an organization to get better at these particular things, or if it's something else, that's fine too. But those really struck me from what you just said. What would you, how would you advise them to hone that, let's say, where they probably are not quite optimized on it?
Sure. So as a lean practitioner, I love, all those methodologies, and one of the best methodologies to get to the true root cause is the 5 whys. I mean, there are others like fishbone and 8D analysis, but the 5 whys is quick and dirty. And you just keep asking, well, why? Why this? Why this? Why did it do that? Until you get down to the final, oh, okay, now I get it. And that is just something that any team can implement. You identify the direct cause, and then you get to the true root cause by using the 5 whys. And you don't have to stop at 5. If you get to root cause at 4, okay, that's good too. But generally somewhere around 5 or 6, you'll identify the root cause.
Yeah.
And then I would definitely say mapping your process is a great idea, because you get to identify areas of waste and also possible areas of improvement. So you can see who's involved, where the handoffs are, both for process and for documentation, and you can very quickly identify opportunities to remove waste in your process. And then one that oftentimes gets overlooked is simply identifying what are your key metrics. What is it in your process that you intend to measure? And then how are you going to establish a baseline for those measurements? And because it's only when you have a baseline, and then after you make some kind of changes, you take the measurements again, you can see what the improvement is. So you can understand if what changes you've made have actually improved the process or not. Pardon me. So if you don't identify your key performance indices, your metrics, if you don't know what you're going to measure, you can't improve anything. So if you're in sales or accounts payable or production, what is it that you want to measure? What is it you want to improve? And then begin to measure. But you have to have a baseline first.
Gotcha. It's kind of funny, Angela, when we mentioned the 5 whys, it reminds me of my 6-year-old son as to like infinite whys as to, why this, why that, and it sort of doesn't have an end point. So I just sort of figured that when you were talking about that. But absolutely love that tip in terms of getting through something sort of quick, but still thorough enough to diagnose something and to kind of get to that root cause, like you were saying. So really love that. I think the what can be measured can be improved. I think that's an oft forgotten, just skip past, or just things moving too fast to stop and do it kind of thing. So really appreciate you emphasizing that as well. I think maybe a decent segue here into the sort of technology or automation side of things, coming from process improvement, is do you have any favorite tools, automations, hacks, if you will, technologically speaking, that people can use both for process improvement or just sort of in a generalized sense, make their life easier, make the business management more manageable to them, or things like that?
Okay, so I'm also a Six Sigma practitioner, and I'm currently working on my black belt, and so I love the DMAIC process for any type of improvement project. And so DMAIC stands for define, measure, analyze, improve, control. And if you go through that process for your project, you'll understand how the improvement path works end to end. So you have to define what is the problem, what do you need to solve, and then measure again, what is it that I'm going to measure, and what kind of data can I get from what's available, and then analyze that data. How, what kind of boundaries do I have? What kind of baseline do I have? Is the data, can it be represented in a histogram? Can it be represented in a Pareto chart? How can I cut and dice this data to best represent what I want to get to? And then improve. All right, now what improvement do I want to make in this process based on the definition of my problem that I originally started with? So this is kind of where you set your experiments up. What if I set my production batches up differently? So instead of 24 units per batch, I go to 36, or instead of daily reports, I go to bi-weekly, or whatever improvement you want to make, and then look at the data again, and then when you feel like you think that your improvements have made an impact, then you begin to control that process. And so that's the DMAIC process. So I'm also a big proponent as far as a tool. I'm a big fan of Airtable, especially with the AI enhancements that this database now has available, because this allows the entire team to collaborate, but then control the view of the data based on personal preferences. So I can view a data set in a grid or spreadsheet view, in a Kanban, a calendar, a Gantt chart. All these different views are available for the same data set. And then it also has, as I mentioned, AI capabilities. So it's just completely off the chart. I love Airtable. And it's very visual, so you can add all kinds of stuff to it. So for me, that's just really super. I love it. Absolutely. And then again, for root cause analysis, I just think you can't go wrong with 5 whys. So for tools and automations, those are the tools. And Airtable integrates with everything: Zapier, HubSpot, Outlook. It just
like all these big recognizable
absolutely
names and tools. Yeah.
Absolutely.
And Angela, one thing our audience should definitely check out on your LinkedIn feed is the Tech Talk Tuesday. One of the
Yes.
things, I just had to give it a plug, and I want to kind of expand on it for a second. So when I was first engaging with your content, Angela, I noticed you had a Tech Talk Tuesday about branching chats in GPT. I think any ChatGPT user should definitely check that out. It would be super helpful to them. I also noticed, I think very recently, this week, you had something about Trello. I'm a big Trello fan, so I can't wait to dive into that one. And so I wanted to tee that up that way, Angela, because I wanted you to kind of expand on, and I do this with every guest, to talk a little bit about AI and how it sort of impacts what they do or how they see the world. How does that factor into some or all of the things we talked about today? Like, how do you see, for these types of categories we discussed, somebody bringing AI into that equation, maybe speeding things up, eliminating wasteful practices, things of that nature? Anything you can kind of illuminate along those lines. And of course, along the way, if you have any can't do without AI tools you want to sort of throw in there. I know you have a big list of them, I think, somewhere. So if you have a few at the top that you want to sort of throw into that answer, feel free.
Okay, so I should probably let your audience know that in my business I support 3 AI thought leaders. So I have an Airtable base of more than 400 AI tools, and what they're used for, what their purpose is, and I'm constantly adding to that as I become aware of cool new stuff to check out. And but I would say that if you're just starting to use AI, particularly for your own productivity, start by writing out like 5 to 10 steps that it would take to complete a recurring activity, like onboarding a client, issuing a purchase order, something like that that you regularly do. And then look at the steps that are repetitive, manual, slow, boring, and so forth. And that these are then your AI opportunities. So this would build the foundation for automation readiness. Next, you want to identify the low risk, high reward use cases for those tasks, such as drafting email, summarizing meeting notes, creating standard operating procedures, anything like that. And then you can use ChatGPT or one of the other GPTs or LLMs, or a writing tool of some sort that could easily help with these tasks. And then use that AI to, you can also use AI to make risk management easier. So you could actually have ChatGPT generate a risk management template for you, and then go in and ask GPT to help identify the potential risks based on your business functions or operations. So once it's created the template for you, you just ask it, give it a prompt like, as a sales manager for a small XYZ business, what potential risks should I be aware of for XYZ? Or you could even be more specific if you give it some information about your clients, your target clients. You could make it specific about your operations, anything like that, and it will create a list of risks for you, and it will come back and ask you more questions like, would you like me to expand on, and you say yes or no, and pretty soon you can have a fully defined risk register. But I love using ChatGPT to help me automate, definitely creating email, social media content, just about everything that I get bored with. And
That's a great way.
and plus well, first of all, I have created 2 agents in ChatGPT. I have Patsy, who is my research agent, and then I have Sally, who is my social media agent, and I talk to them. So I turn on the voice capability, and so I can just talk to them like, Patsy, what's going on in the Texas semiconductor sector today? Bam. And
Wow.
I get all these answers.
So, Angela, did you use the new feature that came out fairly recently, where you can go into the OpenAI sort of agent builder, and you can sort of string actions together in there, or you can sort of assemble a series of actions together there, or are you strictly working within the normal GPT area, and you're just sort of giving very customized instructions to create an agentic capability?
So when it was just ChatGPT 4.0, I went in and created personas and gave
Okay.
them identities. I said, okay, Patsy, you're a Southern grandma. This is how I want you to respond to me. So she'll come back and she'll say, oh, honey, that's a great idea. You're smarter than the average bear. Da 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 da. Here's, da 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 da. But then Sally is, you know, a 20-something social media genius, and she's, you know, she's pulling all kinds of stuff that's very millennial. I'm a Gen X, you know, but she's giving me the millennial view on things.
Yeah. I think, you know, what I really appreciate about the way you laid that out, Angela, is, and I'm kind of indicting myself here, I'm guilty of seeing these cool new AI tools come out, just chasing after them and then looking for a use case. I like how you took the exact inverse of that, and you're taking a very thoughtful, step-by-step approach to then determining, okay, this is what I'm trying to solve, then what's the best tool to solve it? Because I fully thought through, you know, like you said, what's manual, what's slow, what's boring, what's the lowest risk, what's the highest reward, and you've sort of determined all these foundational elements and you put a tool on top of them, versus let me just try everything that's kind of flying around out there. It seems like there's a new one every day, hour, you know, whatever the case may be, especially as people become able to make no-code apps and things like that. You just make them in minutes. So it's a really great. I mean, I think our audience really needs to linger here on this. If you're trying to use AI better, smarter, if you haven't even started, this would be a great way to approach doing so, and doing it in a way that has the best yield, I think, at the end point.
Well, I even had Patsy create her own professional headshot.
Okay.
So I'm like, Patsy, if you had a LinkedIn profile, what would your professional headshot look like?
That's hilarious. I mean, I think I really appreciate, Angela, how you name them to make your own workflow, I guess, seem more natural to you, versus you know, feeling like you're talking to a machine and sort of stilting your language that way. You just made it like, hey, this is what I would call the person. This is what I picture them. Here's a name for it, and now you're just sort of in flow as you converse, you know, with that persona.
Yes. Yeah.
And one other clarification, Angela, is, and just my fascination taking over as we go a little bit off the script. With the voice mode, are you using like the speech to text on, let's say, on the desktop? You can do input by speech instead of typing, or are you literally doing the conversational back and forth? Let's say that we can speak to the app and it's speaking back to you.
It's conversation. Yeah.
Okay.
And I've modified the voice. I mean, I've selected the voice, but then I've gone in and I'm like, that pitch is too gravelly. It's too low. I want it to be higher. You know, I need the cadence to be slower. She's a Southern lady. It needs to be slower.
It was really fine-tuned.
Yeah, you can do all those things.
Love it. Well, I mean, this is you know, one of the things that I think you know, transforming business real time, and it's such a hugely impactful area. And I think it's just going to be everything you shared with us today, Angela, on this and all the other topics, be hugely helpful to our audience, to our listeners. And so I can't thank you enough for that. Angela, where should everybody find you online? Where do you want to have them focus when they're looking for more content from you, for more wisdom from you?
Well, obviously on LinkedIn, and my LinkedIn profile is just Angela Thurman, and it may say Angela Thurman PMP, actually.
Okay.
And then my website is thurmanco.com. So I do have, in addition to the Tech Talk Tuesdays, I do also have my blog and a list of all of my events, which includes webinars I've taught, podcasts I've been part of. So all of that is also on my website. I try to keep all my content fresh.
Excellent. I can attest to that. First of all, if you're not following Angela on LinkedIn, do so immediately after listening to this podcast. Angela, I cannot thank you enough. I learned from you real time in this episode, and I love that. I will continue learning from you after this episode. We really, Pransform, we really, really appreciate you coming on here, sharing all of this with the audience, giving your time to us, and we hope to have you back sometime in the future.
Oh, that'd be great. Thanks, Chris.
Thanks, Angela.
Okay. Bye-bye.